promise I won't watch Anaconda videos for a week. So yeah, I'll try not to anyway. This is a waste of time. This is a sick motherfucker, and that's all you can say. And the 13 people, thumbs up. I mean, just an amazingly, you're sick motherfuckers. I'm sorry, you're just crazy and fucking stupid as fuck. And yeah, you're blocked. Yeah, well, you'll probably already have you all blocked anyway. Carla and some other crazy fucks. Vivian. There's no bottom. It's like a false god of hypnotism. Whatever. I'm sick of the poets and their bullshit. Anyway, I mean, this is just disgusting. So, well, anyway, go ahead and say this shit. You're just such a conniving, lying piece of shit.
One of the interesting things that I find about Benatar's view of suffering is that he doesn't really explore it as exhaustively as I might have liked.
Well, whatever. I mean, that's, you know, I don't know what you wanted him to do. Just show a bunch of disgusting pictures with people having tumors and their eyes shoved out of their heads and shit? What exactly did you want him to say? He assumed you were smart enough to understand that people suffer for lots of different reasons. Some of them physical, some of them because they watch their baby get run over by a train. Right before their eyes it happens. Right in front of them. And yes, they could just say, well, I'll just make a new one. Fuck it. No point in crying over mutilated baby, right? Isn't that a cliche that everybody knows? No point in crying over mutilated baby. I mean, spilt milk, yeah, well, that's upsetting, but, you know, mutilated baby, who cares, right? I mean, have you had this conversation with your little slut wife? I mean, have you talked about how you're not going to really give a shit if the kid dies, or if she dies, because you're going over it in 15 minutes because you know there's no point in suffering over it for no good reason? Yeah, so he's going to trivialize Benatar by saying somehow Benatar is advocating, you know, because he's anti-suffering, that means he somehow thinks we as humans have, he doesn't think we as humans have any use as we are, as empathetic depressives. He certainly doesn't think we have any use as insensitive rapists. But he perverts it, you know, he just cheats the argument.
It's just taken that suffering exists and it's to be avoided.
Yeah, not at all cost, not creating, not existing in a world where we rape and pillage, or we're happy Nazis, you know, joyfully sewing lampshades, you know, out of tortured Jews. That's none of his context here. So why are you pretending that's something he said when it's something he clearly and overtly doesn't say in the book, and says everything to the opposite effect, which is we as humans have absolutely no value, even when we're doing as good as we can. Even when we're being fucking decent, we still suck. But he's certainly not advocating that you should eviscerate the only things that he might consider to be dignities of human beings, which is their capacity to suffer the indignities of harm. Watch their family members die of some horrible disease and shed a tear. Fucking evil fucker.
I would sort of say, what is the ultimate nature, the fundamental nature of suffering?
The nature of suffering. Well, again, what kind of suffering are we talking about? Obviously, the physical suffering exists, okay, as a reward and punishment mechanism, and it's only when something breaks down entirely that the suffering is useless, okay? I mean, our teeth are sensitive for good reason, to keep them from getting broken, but once they're broken, yeah, then the pain just is a waste of time almost. There's no point in it letting you know. Cancer tumors aren't going to do you any good feeling pain. Okay, it's killing you. Well, it's no point in you suffering while you die. So, yeah, nature's dumb. Gee. And then when it comes to the emotional stuff, that has to do with the social organization. And, again, those empathies, those normal empathies, sympathies, if we extended them to everybody in the world, it would only make us better people. If we actually could feel the pain of not just our mother and father dying, or our siblings dying, but any person dying, that's an idea of making you a better person, not a lesser person. expanding your capacity to feel is more admirable than narrowing it logically.
I would say suffering is an experience that something does not want to have. In fact, it's something that a conscious entity or a sentient being has an aversion to.
Yeah, the aversion is to bad existing, okay? And it's easy for us to get it when the bad happens to us personally. The biological mechanism will let you know. And then it's not too horrible that human beings can actually feel each other's pain a little bit, and we're not fucking Tyrannosauruses. Now, yes, Tyrannosaurus is more efficient. I don't give a fuck, my brother. Who cares? I'm not paying any attention to that shit. Not having empathy makes you a better cockroach. But again, is the goal to just be a cockroach? I mean, that's not what Benatar is advocating. Benatar's not saying be as insidious a bug as possible. He's already saying we're too much of a goddamn fucking bug. Retard. I mean, liar. I mean, this is just a lie. This guy's slandering another guy's work, and that's all he's doing. He's lying about what he's saying as his premise, and then arguing that false premise. I mean, this is just such a bullshit move. Because he's too much of a coward to face the people who are actually having the conversation live. He's yelling at he's yelling at a book instead of trying to argue with the people who are actively engaged in the conversation. Because he's a coward.
It's an experience. In other words, without a subject, without something experienced suffering, suffering can't exist. There has to be an experiencer of it, or it can't exist. So suffering is something that takes place in the first person. It's something that
Well, again, this idiotic notion that it's a first person, it happens in any person. That's the definition of a person, is something that can suffer in this more sophisticated manner.
Experiences. Now, ultimately, what is it, though? We know that it's an experience. I think that that's something that one would agree upon, although I'm open to being questioned on that.
Yeah, see, it's open to being questioned on the parts that don't mean anything. But the parts that do mean something, those are the parts he doesn't suggest there should be any conversation, because he's declared it a fact that suffering is controllable. Yeah, he's going to get to that one.
But
we only have it if we're lazy.
I mentioned before that there is a certain element of the faculty of choice involved there.
Right, so he mentioned that there's an element of choice. Now, this element of choice is believed by who? This guy, apparently he believes in psychic surgery. Apparently this guy doesn't understand that, you know, all those things they do over there in India, like lying on a bed of nails and walking on coals, they're all fucking tricks. Conference Report will explain them to you, because he apparently collects these tricks. He even has his cheeks pierced so he can do the trick. Yeah. They're tricks, for fuck's sake. You think the asshole setting himself on fire is really not feeling anything? Oh, God. I mean, you really are. You people are fucking sick, stupid motherfuckers.
Where you have...
I mean, the place is a shithole. India is a shithole. You think these people have figured out their nirvana of the perfect opiate? You think they've figured that out? They're not even smart enough not to throw dead people in their drinking water, for fuck's sake.
Have means at your disposal to reduce your suffering, but you don't.
There he goes. Well, you have means at your disposal to reduce your suffering. What means is that? Oh, I can become incredibly insensitive. I can turn my brain into some sort of cockroach brain, and I can watch my sister get run over by a train, or my baby get torn to pieces by wild dogs or something, and I'm not supposed to be affected, and I'm not supposed to be in any way traumatized or scarred. I'm supposed to be an insensitive, fucking goddamn insidious monster and just say, who the fuck cares? And if I don't like the smell of some kind of foreigner, I can suggest that why don't we just eradicate them? Why don't we put them in concentration camps and shove them in fires? Because I don't feel anything. What's in it for me? Fuck you. Crazy bastard. Oh yeah, Benatar is going to take the option of being a cockroach. He thinks we should become cockroaches. He's against suffering, therefore it means he thinks we should become cockroaches. No, I don't think he said that anywhere in his book. I don't think he suggested that would be a good idea. So obviously he's not saying what you're saying he's saying. He's not saying reduce suffering at all cost. That means make the victim of rape insensitive to her rape and make the perpetrator of rape insensitive to the victim's suffering, which now doesn't exist. Let's all just pretend nothing causes pain and nothing is bad, and then we'll just all sit around here with fucking goddamn glib smiles on our dopey, retarded motherfucking cunt cockroach faces and pretend everything's the fuck okay when it's not. So you can dance, so you can motherfucking dance and eat motherfucking goddamn cunt cheese. I mean, theoretically, if you made the cheese, if cooked Jews tasted like cheese, he would eat them.
Avail yourself of them. Now that's an interesting thing.
Because it didn't. Hey, there's no point in me suffering over it. They're dead, so who cares? That's this philosophy, you fucking cunt retards. That's what you're fucking goddamn lapping up over here in the comment section, you fucking weasels. That's what you're thumbing up, jackasses. Fucking turds.
Again, it's an interesting thing when you sort of see someone, as it says in the book of Proverbs, some people are so lazy they won't put food into their own mouths.
I don't know. Does it really say that? And fuck you. It's a metaphor. Do you really think somebody existed on Earth who was so lazy they wouldn't put food in their own mouths? Do you really think that really happened in some real place on real fucking Earth? No, I don't think so. Somebody might have enough money to hire people to shit for them and do everything for them, but I think that's a little different than what the metaphor is implying, jackass. I mean, to use this kind of nonsense. And so do you get what he's just saying here? Okay, so my sister spent 6 years dying of cancer. 2 years really, 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 really bad. And this motherfucker saying she only suffered because she was fucking lazy. That's what this fucking cunt is saying. This fucking disgusting cunt is minimizing and diminishing anyone who has suffered on this goddamn planet and calling them lazy for it. If you've had empathy, if you've wept for somebody else's horror, you're a lazy motherfucker. God. I really hate this guy.
Now that is, to me, an unsatisfactory way of...
You are unsatisfactory.
...of coming at suffering, and coming at suffering particularly in...
Right, you just said it's unsatisfactory for you to be lazy and have suffering. You just can't get a big enough brain tumor, motherfucker. There's just not a brain tumor big enough in the entire universe for you to get what you deserve.
The context of what one can actually do about it. Because it tends to, if you say that the person is too lazy to put food in their own mouth, you're saying that hunger is therefore a moral failure. Laziness being apparently a moral failure. It's not something that, you know, it's not something that you're not responsible for. It's your fault if you're a lazy person. I think that that's what it means.
I don't know. Did that make any sense to you motherfuckers? You 13 people now? That made sense to you? That drivel? Hunger is lazy, and then not reacting to hunger is lazy, but if you don't eat, you're lazy. What did he just say there, you stupid fuckers? This was a coherent statement? No. I don't think there's anybody who could type that shit and make it make goddamn fucking sense.
And I'm not even sure if that's in the book of Proverbs. I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've already established it as a fact that you can control pain because Buddha says so. It wasn't Buddha, it was whatever. Buddha's cousin had throat cancer, and he says he didn't feel a thing. So therefore, and I had major throat surgery. Yeah, the doctor, used a cold pencil. Oh shit.
I'm not all that well read in the Bible. But it's an interesting thing because it implies, and I think that our civilization kind of buys into this notion, that if we're trying to reconcile our apparent ability to influence our own lives and the fact that our lives don't always turn out the way we want them to.
Our ability to influence our own lives. See, that's not how it works, jackass. We influence others. That's what we can influence, idiot. And they can influence you, but it's this self thing doesn't really happen. But, you know, it's because you're an ignorant fuck that you don't understand that either.
It's kind of our fault, guilt. Now, I don't agree with that point of view.
Right. You just called people lazy, and then you talk about guilt. And so this is more of the hypocrisy. I can call people things. I can degrade them. I can malign them. But they can't, because if they do, it's guilt-mongering. I mean, you're just such a duplicitous motherfucking cunt hypocrite. And the fact that these weasels can't admit the hypocrisy in this rhetoric. You fucking cunt weasels.
I think that it's a misreading of what suffering is, and in particular, what our ability to make choices is in reference to our suffering.
Right. So he's saying that, again. I mean, I hope he's had this conversation with his wife and let her know that she's completely disposable. I mean, really. She can die tomorrow, get a brain tumor, be dead in a week, and he'll be back to the nookie parlor in 5 minutes because he's in control of his suffering, and he is not going to be bothered one goddamn bit. He's not going to have one little wince at her suffering or his loss of her in his life, because he's impervious to this thing called suffering, and because he's making the choice not to suffer. And that we all should make that choice. That we all would, we would all better express our dignity as human beings by becoming more and more insensitive till we're as insensitive as a fucking cockroach.
It's not as though we're choosing to suffer. I suppose it's theoretically possible. Again, I mentioned in Amor.
He just said, you know, I mean, again, this duplicity. He just said it's a choice. He just said Benatar's a lying scum because he's not suggesting people should exercise their choice not to suffer.
Fati, one would not necessarily choose deliberately to suffer, but wouldn't see suffering as something inherently to be avoided. Because, again, we have the transformative power.
Again, to take the entire conversation out of Benatar's book. His book is Better Never to Have Been. It's about the been-ness, okay? It's not about the being. It's about the been. It's about the fact of making living things, okay? Not what you have to do once you are a living thing. Once you are a living thing, you must suffer to have any character or dignity. There's no other way to do it as a practical matter. You will have no character if you do not suffer. The argument is there any point in doing any of that? Is there any point in embracing that suffering so you can do a motherfucking cunt idiot dance? And the answer is, fuck no!
Of love. I made a few videos on that a while back, just under the title Love.
Again, what does that mean again? What does love mean if it means that you will disconnect from showing it its due respect, and that you will not mourn its slaughter or its rape?
And I think that we sort of agree that love can sort of alter things. That the experience of feeling love.
Well, again, this is more just ignore the truth of it. No one's saying beauty doesn't exist. What they're arguing is that the world is rude to beauty, that it rapes beauty, it slaughters it, it genocides it, it does all kinds of horrid, disgusting things to it, and that's the unacceptable part. Fuck.
Love can alter one's experiences of things. So we have a certain input into our own experiences. If we cultivate love within ourselves, it will, in the end, alter alter our experiences of other things.
Look, you know, Benatar used the words disease and death in his book. He wasn't talking about this emotional crap anyway, so this is just such a canard to bring this up as if all of these things are under our control. Obviously, they're not under our control. This is just such an insult to all the people who have chronic and debilitating pain. You're just insulting them gratuitously.
Including our experiences of suffering. What fascinates me is the question inherent in that original point that I made in this video. What is it that would prevent someone from exercising their faculty of choice in order to reduce their own suffering?
Again, reduce to what? Reduce in what way? Reduce what kind of suffering? So everybody like you has only suffered because they have a big nose and a receding hairline. And yeah, they can get over themselves pretty quickly. You know, why don't they do that? Why don't they just not worry about the bullshit and worry about something that could actually matter? Well, yeah, that's about what? 1/1,000,000th of the suffering on planet Earth? Asshole?
I have, for example, let's say that I'm suffering, I'm miserable about my life in a general sense. And I see, I don't know, say the Salvation Army band marching down my street, beating their drums, playing their trombones and everything like that, and singing and beating on their what are those things called? Bing bing, you know, the things that they're known for pounding on the Salvation Army. Cymbals, not cymbals, but tambourines.
They usually march to it. Bong, 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 you know, they don't do the wristy thing. But anyway, yeah, and then you blow your brains out, right? You're already depressed, and the Salvation Army shows up, and that just puts you right over the edge. Would me.
Let's say that I see that taking place, and I'm sitting inside, and I'm miserable, and I see that these people are getting some fresh air, they're working on their emotions, they're working on feeling really good.
They're fat and smelly.
They're praising God, let's be honest. And, you know, I choose not to engage myself in that kind of activity. I choose not to join the band. Now, one could say that, you know, probably a physician or a psychologist would tell you that if you actually went out there, if you know, got outside and followed them along and sang with them and beat their tambourines with them and, you know, whatever.
Right, so I watch the heroin addict shoot up the heroin. I see a little smile after he throws up and shit creep over his face. And I say, oh yeah, so yeah, I'm choosing to be miserable. And yeah, I should go shoot up some heroin. No. You know, I'm smart enough to know that whatever they have ain't worth having. It ain't worth having the disease that makes you smile for that reason. Right. No, thank you. Yeah, the disease is worse than the cure, kind of. I mean, the cure is worse than the disease. I'd rather be the sick one than the one with the cure.
There's some chance, at least, that your overall sense of well-being will be improved. Why would I not do that? Well, I know why.
Yeah, why would I not drink lead paint? I mean, this is just so stupid. Why would I not become a mongoloid? They're happy eating poo. Yes, it's so much more efficient. Okay, I'll just hit myself with this hammer until I'm a mongoloid, and therefore everything will be fine. I mean, this is just trivial tripe.
I wouldn't do it. First of all, I have no desire to do something like that. I have no desire to, you know...
You just did a video where you're doing your hala hula hala blah 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 blah. So what? It's not Indian enough? Is that it? The salvation is too white?
Get on the wagon and start praising God and all that kind of thing, because I don't really trust that kind of way of...
Right, you trust an 8-armed, elephant-headed, you know, fat belly.
Feeling good about yourself. I don't trust the religious approach to it. But you see, I don't have...
Yeah, again, I mean, this is, again, can you get more duplicitous? He just did a video celebrating this idea of just put yourself in a la-la dance mood. You know, he posts links to his little special mantra music and getting into the What's the difference? That's all religion.
The idea that the reduction of suffering is so important. But if I do have the view that the reduction of suffering is all important, I kind of don't have...
Again, so he's saying, Benatar's saying that the reduction of suffering is all important. So, yes, make the rapist incapable of feeling any feelings for his victims, and you know, that's reducing suffering, and so therefore we've solved the problem. You need sex. The thing that's stopping you from having sex is some sort of empathy for the woman you might violate. Therefore, we'll just get rid of that empathy and everything will be fine. No. It's just this is just so fucking trivial and superficial. We know that that lack of empathy will lead to more harm in the long run, and Benatar would explain that to you if you allowed him to speak in his defense. I mean, obviously he's not going to, you know, take his time to waste time arguing with you, so you're just going to keep pretending you're making an argument that's winning. But I'm sure Benatar would be quite capable of explaining to you that the amount of harm we will do as insensitive monsters is far, far, far greater than the harm of us feeling those emotions.
Have that as an excuse. I don't have skepticism as an excuse not to do something irrational if that is actually going to make me feel good.
Again, but we know that Christianity doesn't make people feel good, it makes people dead. So we know what the evil of religion is. We know that it's a sick, intoxicating drug that'll turn people into capitalists and shit. We know it doesn't do anything good to people. So what's this argument about? That la-la dance will be at a cost to the civilization. You will degrade the civilization by joining in to that silly dance.
It doesn't or make me feel better than I am now feeling. You know, we all know that, say, sitting listlessly on the couch for days on end is not very good for your overall sense of well-being.
Right, but if you're a rapist or a pedophile, it's excellent for the social... The social net benefit is huge. So yes, we gain. If you're nothing but a fucking leech and a pariah, then a predator, then yeah, if we can keep you nailed to your couch, we win. Less harm in the world. The road to less suffering on Earth is to keep assholes glued to their couch. Duh.
But a person who is sitting listlessly on the couch will see something happening that they see other people engaging in that does seem to be benefiting these other people, and yet they still opt not to engage in it.
Well, again, where would Benatar say, if you can do something to become a better person, become a vegetarian, do this? He's for all of that shit, jackass. So again, he's not saying anyone should wallow in their fatness or wallow in any condition that degrades their mental health or mental comfort. He would just argue that if you're going to make yourself insensitive and turn yourself into a fucking malicious, blood-sucking cockroach, that will not be productive.
Engage their faculty of choice not to do this.
So again, he just keeps calling it choice. The word suffering is somehow now right next to the word choice. Is that what you 13 people believe? You believe people just choose to be disabled by pain and suffering. You think they choose to be affected by the horrid mutilation of their child. If I have a videotape of your kid getting run over, I should put it on YouTube and we can all have a good laugh. Fuck you.
Put aside this idea that somehow it's their fault now that they're sitting listlessly on the couch in a state of abject depression and misery. Let's say that it's not simply their own laziness that is placing them there, because I think that that's kind of a moral, putting a moral on their suffering.
Well, you already did that, right? So this retraction that isn't even a retraction. You're not apologizing for the insult you've already perpetrated, and you're just restating the same insult and pretending like you're saying, well, no, I'm not really saying that, but of course I am saying exactly that.
Moral value on their suffering. In other words, it's their fault. Guilt. It's your fault if you're suffering.
That's what the word lazy means. Yes, lazy is a guilt word. Guess what? Newsflash, retard. But you knew that, didn't you? Yes, you're such a manipulating, conniving, scheming motherfucking piece of shit.
Because you're not willing to,
It's really irritating that he has blue eyes. You know, I just found out blue eyes are only 10,000, maybe even 6,000 years old. It's really a new occurrence, you know, and that whole, you know, that there was a blue-eyed person 6,000 years ago, and that was the first one, and that was it. And we're all related. All the blue-eyed people are related to that guy 6,000 years ago. It's pretty amazing. 10,000, you know, some 6 to 10. Surprising. It's actually, we don't have blue eyes. We just don't have brown eyes. That's the trick of it. It's the lack of brown eyes. We are unbrown-eyed.
The book of Proverbs says, put food into your own mouth. Let's say that there's something else that would prevent somebody from actually taking concrete steps to reduce their own suffering. What might that be? I don't even necessarily even have an answer to that. But again, I've posited the view.
Yeah, well then what's the point of this whole conversation? I don't have an answer to that. So therefore what? What's the point? The suffering exists. It's a real thing in the world. It's bad. And the argument is that there's nothing good that we're ever going to do here to compensate for that bad. We're not going to prevent a bigger bad from happening. There's no bigger bad happening in the universe. See, if there was something we could solve in the universe, if we could put out some fire that was, you know, burning Jews on another planet, then yeah, we would be valuable then, and then we could justify the mess we're making, the suffering we're creating, because that suffering would be smaller than the suffering we'd be satisfying or curing. But there is no such economy here.
That saying that I don't believe in that is not necessarily a rational response given, say, in terms of Benatar asymmetry alleged, that you actually do believe that the reduction of suffering has the ultimate value.
Well, again, that's not what he says. That's not what the asymmetry says, right? It just says that you're in a tough position here where not having a good isn't a bad, and where, you know, and the bad is still bad. You know, that's just the catch of it, that most of the goods are made out of removing a bad. That's just the catch of life. The bad comes first, unfortunately. And you're just correcting from a bad. You're not really making a good. A true good. So it just becomes an equation of balances between preventing negatives. And the easiest thing to do is prevent the whole fucking negative engine.
Somebody would sort of tell themselves that they believe that the reduction of suffering is all important, but then they would somehow recoil from the thought of doing something that may actually reduce their suffering.
Again, their suffering. So again, you're not recognizing the argument Benatar is making, and he certainly would have extended it to the entire. He said right in the first page of his book, or second page, you know, this argument could be extended to the entire natural ecosystem, not just human beings. So he understood the idea that it's just the sentience problem, the problem of being a sensitive organism. But again, you've again converted it into something to do with an individual rather than pragmatically recognizing that it has to do with an entire system. That it has nothing to do with the fact that your kid is healthy. It has to do with the fact that some kids won't be. And you have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge that it's not about you, it's about how you affect the world. And if you are mitigating your suffering by doing drugs or something, and that drug creates all kinds of havoc in the social environment, or turns you into some monster that'll beat somebody over the head for their money with a brick, then that's not harmless anymore. So you haven't mitigated your pain in some harmless way, you've mitigated it in some harmful way. So in terms of you've made more harm than the value of your own comfort is worth, quite obviously. And that's the problem with everything we do. Our comfort comes at a price. And again, you're just going to keep pretending, no, that's not possible. Yes, it's possible that the piece of cheese you enjoy eating causes pain and suffering in the thing that had to make it.
Now, I would say that that's not so much laziness. That's far too simplistic, I think, a point of view to take. Again, it's kind of
he just keeps doing it, right? So again, he's not guilt mongering at all. He's just keeps every 2 minutes of the video, he's just going to keep saying the word lazy, lazy, lazy. I'm not saying it's 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 lazy. This is a tactic, okay? This guy's a professional fucking propagandist, and this is just a tactic he's using. And you people fall for it, you fucking imbeciles.
Very moralistic Christian sort of kind of view that, you know, your sufferings are your own fault.
Yeah, and again, keep bringing up nuns. Yeah, throw them in every 3 minutes too. Keep bringing up the idea of the dogma of religion, as if that has something to do with Benatar's argument, which it doesn't.
What I would take that as, it strikes me as confusion or a lack of self-examination. Because
a lack of self-examination. So you're exercising a lack of self-examination if you don't realize it'd be really cool for you to become a cockroach, an insensitive Nietzschean cock fucking roach. That's a lack of self-examination. Yeah, sure it is.
Maybe you only...
Again, Nietzsche would have been perfectly happy if he got the chick. Then the world would have made sense. But because the other guy got the chick, now the world doesn't make sense. That's the extent of Nietzsche's brilliant self-examination. Yeah, he was a real icon of logitosis.
Think that the reduction of suffering is the most important thing. Or maybe you only think that you think that.
Well, again, you're not recognizing that Benatar's talking about a system, the net product. And he will say that, yes, if the net product is a more... again, the context is a certain level of functionality. To say that, oh yes, let's reduce suffering by all becoming retards. The consequence would be that you'd have nothing called dignity in your existence. So where did Benatar imply that yes, it would make sense to sacrifice fundamental function? It's like saying that, you know, Benatar's already saying again that the game is ludicrous. He clearly wouldn't say it's less ludicrous by making it more ludicrous. You get it?
It's one thing to say that I believe this, and it's another thing to actually believe it. I've often thought that most of the religious people that I see, I rather suspect that most of them don't even believe what they say.
Again, before, yeah, it doesn't even, you know, maybe it's every minute I have to keep bringing up religion.
That they believe, and they don't even believe what they tell themselves that they believe. You know, I don't think that most, you know, in my experience, most of the religious...
Obviously, they don't believe any of it. Most of them don't even read the book, right? There's a book that says, I'm going to torture you forever if you don't, ... And they don't read that book. We're supposed to believe that. They believe they're going to get tortured forever if they violate a rule in the book, and yet they don't read the book. Yeah, I think we can say, gotcha.
People that I've spoken to in my life actually confront themselves with what they tell themselves that they believe, especially people that come from a tradition that has elaborate mythology.
They don't believe any of it. The only thing they believe is that, oh, it's harmless and it's fun and you sing and dance and blah, blah, play the tambourine. That's all they know about religion. They're too stupid to read a little bit of history and figure out how religion, you know, is worse than cholera.
And cosmologies and stuff like this. Do you actually believe all that stuff that's written in the Bible and the Old Testament? And do you actually believe that, you know, all these complicated theologies and everything like that?
It's not that complicated, actually. The Ten Commandments really aren't that complicated. They're really simple and, you know, really isn't that tough. And even Jesus didn't bring anything to the table that's all that do unto others, have others do unto you. I mean, what, that's complicated? Nah, it's not very complicated.
You know, when people tell me that they believe that, I'm inclined not to actually believe that they believe them. It's not that I don't. It's not that I don't believe that they.
Yeah, what is there to believe in anyway? Once again, there's no definition of any of this shit. There's like some sort of vague pearly gates with a bunch of rhinestones all around the bottom, and so it's really pretty. But there's no explanation of what the fuck you're gonna do forever up there. You're not gonna have a wife or a penis, so maybe you'll have a big nose to pick, but otherwise you're gonna be out of luck. I mean, relating it to what you're currently doing. Unless you're a Jehovah's Witness, because then you'll be growing potatoes every day. Oh, honey, how was the potato patch? Oh, yes, I planted a bunch of potatoes and stuff. Yes, very productive potatoing. Well, gee, yeah, I'd want to do that forever.
I believe that they believe it. But it's just that they don't, at bottom, actually believe it. Now that strikes me as irrational. You believe that you believe in something. You don't actually believe it.
Yeah, whatever.
Or you believe in something.
It's irrational to believe in Sasquatch or believe in psychic surgery or Hindu magic powers to escape basic brain function.
Or say it's the old faith conundrum. My faith isn't strong enough, and again, in the Catholic tradition, that's somehow implied. It's always implied that it's your fault that your faith isn't strong enough. Or maybe it's just that you only believe that you believe in something, as opposed to actually believing in it. Or you
blah 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 blah. This has something to do with Benatar, an articulate, reasonable, sensible constructor of argumentation. You're going to apply this crap to him. You really are an ass face.
Want to believe it as opposed to you actually do believe it. So, if somebody says that they hold that the reduction of suffering is all important.
Again, where did he say that? Where did he say the reduction of suffering is all important? And that if there's a Nazi crying a tear as you throw in the Jew in the oven, that he would say, oh yeah, let's take away the Nazi's pain. No.
In fact, it's more important than anything else. And yet they opt.
Well, again, the net equation is the net equation. And yes, it's very important that suffering only exists out of necessity, that it never be unnecessary. And Benatar's argument is you can't make a rational, necessary argument. There's no necessary part here. There's no need but a delusion in your motherfucking cunt head. That's it. There's no real need in the real world that human beings are the cure for. It doesn't fucking exist. It only exists in your deluded fucking idiot mind. Emphasizing idiot.
They exercise their faculty of choice to not engage in that which will reduce their suffering.
Again, their suffering. Not the suffering. Not suffering on earth. Again, making people into cockroaches or imbeciles will not reduce suffering on planet Earth.
Is it fair to say, at least at a superficial level, from the outside, that they may not believe what they believe that they believe, in fact?
Right, so he's making this accusation that there's something convoluted or fallacious, just silly about Benatar's perception that suffering be bad. And that he doesn't really believe it because then he'd eradicate it, simply, by just taking away all the pain of the rapists. There, I've gotten rid of half the problem. Right? Oh yeah, the victims are still suffering, but I can give them opium or something. Or I can just kill them, and then their pain goes away altogether. Oh, what a perfect solution. I'll explain to the rapist how they shouldn't feel bad, and then I'll just kill the victim, and now we have a perfect solution. Why isn't Benatar advocating for that perfect solution?
They may just believe that the reduction of suffering is all that matters. They may not actually believe that, and their own actions and their own conduct.
Again, this is just such a lie, right? Because we know, first off, Benatar does not make this argument in his book. He does not say reduce an individual's suffering at any cost, no matter what it takes, no matter how much suffering you cause to prevent their suffering. No, he doesn't say anything like that. And he certainly doesn't say anything about how human beings they do need to exist, and it's okay for them to be highly inefficient in that existence. And so therefore you can conform them into something that's a perpetrator, and it's all okay. That somehow you've balanced the suffering equation. No, he's saying the simplest solution is there's sewage pouring out of the pipe. You just close the pipe.
Is powerful evidence to that effect. Are we really that self-aware that we actually know what we actually believe?
So again, you 13 people think that's a brilliantism. Are we really self-aware enough to know that we actually believe what we believe? So I guess you're all admitting you're imbeciles. Yeah, frankly, I think I am self-aware enough, and I think I'm informed enough about the basic mechanics of the goddamn fucking cunt universe to understand this simple concept. And I understand what a sensation is, and I understand what a desire is, and I just understand what a notion in the head is. And I know a notion in the head isn't a real problem in the universe. It's a synthetic problem made in my goddamn brain. And until I can show a correlation between a real thing in the world, like a victim tied to a railroad track with a train coming, until I can show a real thing that I'm rescuing by being here, I can't claim I'm doing something important.
What we're actually convinced by, deep down? I'm not so sure that we are, because again, we're capable of these kinds of contradictions. Of saying, I believe that the reduction of suffering...
You are. Because you're a hypocrite and a duplicitous one, and a manipulator and a schemer and a motherfucking cunt liar.
Benatar would say that the reduction of suffering is what has ultimate value. But then he won't sort of allow for, or I presume, and again, I'm open to be contradicted here.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm glad you're open to being called a motherfucking liar, okay? Because, yes, Benatar never said, make the rapist feel okay about raping.
He won't allow for certain activities that will reduce suffering. I would say then...
Again, what activities has he put on the table as not being permissible in terms of placating or mitigating against suffering? Again, where's your accusation? What is it related to in any way to anything Benatar has said in his book? Explain. Most of the arguments about suffering are arguments about physical death and physical disease. Where is he claiming don't take the morphine?
That there are caveats attached to his own view that the reduction of suffering is all important. I would say that he's saying, as a general rule, the reduction of suffering is all important. It's not.
Well, and the difference is what? In some way substantial? The fact that you can create circumstances, again, like where you've destroyed all dignity to save yourself suffering, or that you've basically become, like you would feel better if I dressed you as Adolf Hitler. And there would be a certain indignity to that. Okay, yes, it makes you feel good. It makes one individual feel good. They get to dress as Adolf Hitler and dance in the street. But again, the argument would be just made that, but the reason why that would be wrong is because a bunch of Jewish people or homosexuals or other deficients would perceive that as an insult to their ancestors who were tortured. And so they would be incurring more suffering. There's no way to sit there and strip us of these things that give us dignity, and the thing that makes it dignified is that it's respectful of the potential for harm. Some suffering will prevent harm. Some empathy will teach you not to be reckless, and it will prevent harm, so the harm will never happen. So but in a sense, all that will happen is your suffering will be the net reality. You know, in the fact that it'll be the only thing realized as a real thing. But again, we're back to this prevention argument. The prevented has value. It would be ludicrous to take away the fact of prevention as a valuable thing because the negative isn't realized. Not realizing something, something not becoming real, can have value.
Not an absolute.
Well, again, absolute by what? Preposterous and ludicrous perversion of circumstantial reality? Not an absolute based on what? Recontextualizing his book, talking about people upset because one of their toes is a little crooked and they're suffering over it. It's not in his book. It has nothing to do with the argument being made, and yet you perverted it into this mush. Benatar's belief. I mean, amazing. An amazing slander. Antakuntavad, once again, you have lived up to your name. Alright. So there's really no point. This guy's psychotically insane. So there's really no point. I mean, they're letting psychotically insane people talk on the internet. It seems appropriate that somebody should be panicking and saying there's a psychotic insane person talking on the internet, and people are thumbing up it as if it's brilliantisms. That's sort of an indication that we're in big fucking goddamn trouble. So maybe somebody should be playing this shit and arguing with this shit because there's 13 motherfucking thumbs up for a goddamn steaming pile of shit of a video. There's a lot of work to be done on this planet, yo. I mean, work like cleaning. A lot of cleaning that needs to be done. So, until next time. Yeah.